Welcome to episode 4 of season 2 of Four Questions With. Today I'm joined by Wallace Currie, Knowledge Exchange Manager at the UK Agri-Tech Centre, podcaster, and sometime lecturer. So, welcome to the show, Wallace.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me. Congrats on jumping into a second season. Good stuff.
No, it was an interesting first season, and season 2 looks to be even more interesting with some potential guests I have in the pipeline. So, my
Excellent.
first question for you is, how did you get into the agricultural sector?
Well, it was pretty easy start in that I was born to it. I guess if I was to have taken on the farm at home, I would have been a third generation. My dad's parents took on the farm at home here on the Isle of Arran in Scotland, a beef and sheep farm to the tone of about 630 sheep and about early teens of cattle. And my mum and dad run that. And when I was born, running that alongside a sort of retail business on the farm, a sort of farm shop and local delivery service. And yeah, probably probably didn't want to do it at first, and then uni time came. What am I going to do after school? And one of the choices was agriculture, which I ended up choosing. And I fell in love with the people in the sector more than anything, and progressed through the degree and so on, and then found myself on the other side after a master's lecturing only a year after graduating, and now work in education, communications, and all that sort of side of things in the sector.
No, it's definitely interesting start to your journey in the sector. So, my second question for you is, where do you see the agricultural sector heading in the future? That can be with your podcaster hat on, your work hat on, or your lecturer hat on. I'm happy to have all three.
Let's try all three anyway. The knowledge exchange side is my first foray, as it were, into funding and that world. I don't really know anything about it. Well, I'd like to think I do now. I didn't know anything about it, and I had no interest in it, to be fair. But the fund I'm working on, Adopt, Accelerating Development of Practices and Technologies, is focused on that grower, that farmer, that forester, as it were. Those three sectors are the pillars for it. And they have to be the lead. So that funding is only, it's not going to institutions, it's not going to whatever, albeit they can partner. So from a funding perspective, I see a transition towards sort of natural capital, biodiversity, net gain. Um, I can't decide if I do on the sequestration side of things and credits and whatnot. I can't decide if that's going to be a relatively shorter lived thing than the other ones I've just mentioned. But also very important to say, we're transitioning into a world where we've got more than 8 billion people on the planet. We have to produce an intensive, sustainable product, which is hard. So a transition towards that, which I think we're already doing. I think we're one of the best in the world. Probably not the best, but we're one of the best in the world for producing that across the board. So from a funding perspective, probably that. From I guess, podcasting, and not actually from a communications perspective, but because I've interviewed over 500 people, having an idea of what the intention of the sector um, is working towards a world in which we have a much more self-sufficient but also more nutritious product being produced here in the UK. We sit about 65%, give or take, self-sufficiency, and a lot of that's been exported and imported, which I would never want the end of trade to come. But we have the ability to increase that almost overnight, but we also have the ability to increase that over time. And I think that seems like the goal of the sector, but also that that connection, I'm not even going to focus on with the consumer, but that connection with the food sector as well, so that all these products that are being produced, and I'm looking out at some kale going into some lambs at the minute, all of these relatively high quality whole foods that agriculture produces, not being sort of cut out from beneath them, as it were, with ultra high processed foods. It seems to be what I'm picking up. Education perspective, I've just basically spent 2.5 years researching into just this, and I think we're in dire need of a curricularly integrated rural education world where we understand what happens outside the window, not just agriculture, but everything. Looking at the various different careers people can have, construction, hairdressing, agriculture, it doesn't matter, motorsports, whatever. Um, and then sort of working up with a sort of alignment with with curriculum and youth groups, so that sort of social side can also be non-formally educating through your young farmers and whatnot. And then the imperative importance of vocational education at a further and higher education level, whether that is apprenticeship that is already by the very design vocational, but also your sort of HNDs, degrees, your full-time courses going down a route where instead of you go into a class and you learn what the role of the pituitary gland is in the female reproductive endocrinology, you actually go to a farm and you work on how that how farms work in general across the board. So that would be those three pillars. How I would say, but it's a very tricky question to answer.
No, I agree with you about the education side of things. There needs to be more apprenticeships because there's so many different avenues you can go down, whether you're more focused on being machinery operations, m more business focused, being from a farm manager side of things, or focusing on a specific area, whether that be beef, sheep, arable. There's a whole multitude of areas you can go down. I think it's getting people's feet wet and understanding what's there and what might suit their needs and requirements from getting their education sorted. Um, as you said from your sort of knowledge thing, I do agree with you. Farming is looking to become more sustainable, and I think people are becoming more innovative in looking at how they do things to be sustainable. And you're seeing a lot of knowledge sharing. So you can have people do something, they post it up on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, wherever, and you'll get people talking, oh, I do it this way, or oh, that's brilliant. I might try that on my farm.
Yeah, yeah. It's a yeah. It's I don't know the answer. I think in truth, and I think it would be remiss of anyone to come in here and say they do know the answer because I think we'd be moving in that this direction if there was a answer. But there's so many
No, there's so many
different
different
requirements.
avenues you can go down. There's no one right answer because everyone, as we know in the sector, has their own unique perspectives. And that's
Absolutely.
highlighted at shows like Lama, Royal Welsh, Royal Highland, all the regional shows. You get people talking, and then you have people higher up the food chain with the likes of just from a English perspective, Tom Bradshaw, and then his predecessor, Minette Bowers, who have their ideas of where the industry is heading based on what their stakeholders are saying to
Yeah, for
them.
sure. For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So, if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
To believe in the things other people believe about me, or believe in about me, as it were. I think, I've had this pretty fun career in this sector. I've only been in a career for 6 years, and a lot of that has just been okay. Let's try that. Let's see how that goes. Let's whatever. But as a youngster, starting my degree, even before that, I didn't I didn't have the same desire to work on farms as other people, so I assumed this sector wasn't for me, and I was led to believe that by myself. I was never told that by anyone. I created that belief in my own self, and as time went on, people showed me that they believed in things and abilities that I didn't even know I had. So to take the compliment, to be very un-British, and when someone says something that they believe in you or they're nice about you or whatever, to hear it and take it on board and realize, okay, maybe I don't just disregard that as, oh, no, it's nothing, whatever. So yeah, to believe in the things that other people believe in me, I would say.
No, that's it. That's a very good answer. And I think it's something that the agriculture. So
Yep.
my final question for you. So my final question for you is, if you were head of DEFRA, what would be your first order of business?
I mean, first off, I think it's a horrible question because I don't think anyone has the answer. The Listen, you can hear that, and the first thing to jump to is IHT, APR, BPR, get rid of it. And there's an argument to that. My argument wouldn't be get rid of it on an agricultural and a rural and the basis we're looking at it at the minute, I think the abolition of inheritance tax in general would be beneficial because we have this environment where you're taxed for 4/10 of the worth of that business and however it works. I don't know the specifics, but for businesses across our country, not our sector. And I just feel like that stifles the intention of growth. It reduces the requirement for risk to be taken on. It prevents economic growth in our country, and I think that's a real problem. So to hear that, oh, we're going to abolish that, that's fine and that's great, but where does that come from in the rest of the purse? So I would like to get rid of inheritance tax across the board. Again, this comes a very uneducated person from a political space, but the next question is okay, where does that money come from? Where's that extra tax coming from? And I've mentioned it earlier in this call, James, that I think the biggest scourge on our on our uh, on our people, on our consumer, on our producers is ultra high processed foods. I think the UHP, um, the what is it like the market cap of the sector, as it were? It's not called a market cap, but you know what I mean. Is over a
Yeah.
quarter of a trillion in the UK for just for ultra high processed foods. Could there be a UHP tax as opposed to a sugar tax? I don't know. I think there'd be quite a lot that would be able to come off of that, and that would be a hell of a lot more than has been saved by IHT, certainly in agriculture. Maybe not across the board, but that would be a potential way to look at that. So that would be a thing that I would be of interest in doing. It's very much impacting DEFRA. It's not solely DEFRA, but I think it's important. And the other thing that's important, and again, it's not directly DEFRA, but DEFRA's encompassed in this, is I don't think the fact that a politician can be a politician for politician's sake is a good thing. So your DEFRA minister, showing my absolute lack of knowledge here, I don't even know who that is. I know who the shadow one is, but um, them not being from agriculture, the health minister not being from the medical profession, so on and so forth, education, so on and so forth. I think is a problem. I think that should be a thing you have a background in, a working knowledge of, and then you learn the scope of politics, as opposed to going to uni, learning how to be a politician, and you're really just learning how to be political in your career without actually having an industry basis to back that on, would be another thing I would base it on. That I would like to do it if I was in the position of DEFRA minister, which I wouldn't have the power to do, but to put that forward to government that then would impact DEFRA as well. Um, so, do I have a strict answer if I was becoming DEFRA minister and I would do X to make the political sphere for agriculture better? No, probably not because I don't understand it enough. But I think the changes at an actual strategic level of government has to start before you can bring that down to DEFRA.
No, I couldn't agree more. And just to answer your question about who the Secretary of State for DEFRA is, it is Emma Reynolds MP. She
Probably should have known
was
that. Yeah.
previously Economic Secretary to the Treasury, and prior to that, Parliamentary Secretary at the Treasury and Department of Work and Pensions. And she
So like
became
the
an MP in 2024.
like what was her what was her before politics world? Emma Reynolds.
That has got me thinking. Sorry for the silence, but we're just having a quick.
No, it's interesting, I think. Watching this if you're listening to this and this bit hasn't been edited out, this is the reality behind these. MP military mainly
She
policy.
was at a public affair. Well, this is according to Wikipedia, and I hold this. I will take it with a pinch of salt. She was part of a commercial public affairs consultancy. She's done lobbying. She was an advisor to Robin Cook.
So does it make more sense for her to be, i.e., the Minister for International Affairs, for example? I just think it doesn't really make sense. There must be people at Emma Reynolds' level. I know Robbie Moore's the one that jumps to mind, and I know he was in this before, we swapped governments, and that's
Yeah.
fine. But I don't understand the political system enough. People might be listening to this thinking, Wallace, you're an idiot. This is why you can't do that. And fair enough, hands up, cool. But to me, that makes sense.
No, I agree. I think there needs to be something like that, but it at the end of the day, it's those empowered that make the decisions of who's who are in charge of the key parts of government. I would love to have Emma Reynolds on the podcast to ask the four questions. Maybe not question four because she's already in place, but it'd be interesting to hear what she would like to do.
Absolutely. Question four, but assuming you don't have the restriction of the government you have.
Yeah,
Now,
it's
she might be scared to
free
answer that
choice,
for sure. Yeah.
carte
Um,
blanche per se.
I guarantee she won't come on the podcast, by the way. Politicians love the podcasts. They love it.
I might be sending an email through to her relevant contacts to ask the question, and
I
we
have a
shall
few in
see
mind, to
see
be
where
fair.
that goes. But again, Wallace, thank you for coming on, and we'll catch everyone on the next episode.